The money is gone, Victoria. We've transferred everything to Marcus family. My parents announced with smug smiles, their faces radiating a sickening satisfaction. You should have been more supportive of our new family. They truly believed they had won, that they had stripped me of everything, leaving me destitute and broken. Little did they know, their victory was a hollow, temporary illusion. I just calmly replied, "That's interesting," because grandmother's real fortune was hidden where they'd never think to look. Can you believe the audacity? To sit there smirking after stealing what was rightfully mine, all in the name of some new family they'd cobbled together overnight? Tell me, would you have remained calm, or would you have absolutely lost your mind right then and there? My life up until that point had been relatively stable, if not a little lonely. I was an only child, and my grandmother, bless her soul, was truly the only consistent source of unconditional love I'd ever known. My parents, well, they were always distant, emotionally unavailable, always chasing some new fad, some new business venture, some new identity. They weren't bad people, not truly, but they were self-absorbed to an extent that bordered on neglect. Grandmother, however, was my rock. She was an eccentric, brilliant woman with a mischievous twinkle in her eye and a mind like a steel trap. She had built a considerable fortune through shrewd investments and a successful antique business, and she often told me that her wealth was meant for me, her only grandchild, to ensure I had a future free from the struggles she had faced. She'd say, "Victoria, never trust anyone completely with your money. Always have a secret stash, a backup plan. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs." I always thought she was just being dramatic, a charming old lady with old-fashioned sensibilities. How right she was. Grandmother passed away peacefully in her sleep about a year ago. It was devastating. Losing her felt like losing the only anchor I had in the world. After the funeral, the lawyers contacted me and my parents for the reading of the will. I wasn't particularly concerned about the inheritance. I just missed her terribly. But my parents, oh, they were practically salivating. They had always been aware of grandmother's wealth, and I suspect they saw it as their ticket to finally living the lavish lifestyle they always craved without actually having to work for it. The will was clear. Everything, absolutely everything, was left to me. My parents were given a small stipend, enough to live comfortably for a few years, but nothing compared to the vast sums left to me. You should have seen their faces, the shock, the anger, the immediate shift from polite grief to thinly veiled resentment. They tried to contest it, of course, claiming grandmother wasn't of sound mind, but her lawyers were meticulous, and her wishes were undeniably clear. I received everything: the sprawling Victorian house, the antique collection, and the substantial financial portfolio. I felt a pang of guilt seeing their disappointment, but then I remembered all the years of emotional neglect, all the times they prioritized their own fleeting interests over my well-being, and guilt quickly faded. I moved into grandmother's house, immersing myself in her memories, trying to navigate this new chapter of my life. I started going through her belongings, a treasure trove of history and sentimentality. My parents, meanwhile, continued their pattern of chasing the next big thing. About 6 months after grandmother's passing, they announced they were getting remarried to each other again. They had divorced when I was a teenager, then casually dated others, but apparently they had found their way back. And with this reconciliation came a new, incredibly annoying development. Marcus was their new stepson, from a brief relationship my father had during their separation. He was a few years older than me, utterly insufferable, and frankly, a trust fund baby in his own right, though his family's money was old, established, and considerably larger than grandmother's. My parents, in their infinite wisdom, decided that Marcus and his family were their new family, and that I, their actual daughter, was somehow an outsider for not embracing this sudden, bewildering expansion of their already fractured unit. They started trying to pressure me into sharing grandmother's inheritance with Marcus, claiming it was only fair, that we were all family now. I vehemently refused. This was grandmother's legacy meant for me, and I wasn't about to hand it over to a stranger and his wealthy, entitled relatives. My refusal led to arguments, accusations, and a deepening rift between us. They started calling me selfish, ungrateful, cold. It was a brutal emotional campaign, but I stood my ground. Then came the day they delivered their smug announcement. They had found a loophole, they claimed, some obscure legal maneuver that allowed them, as the executors of grandmother's estate, a role they insisted on, despite my objections, primarily to ensure they had eyes on the money, to transfer the bulk of the assets to another family member, if said family member was deemed unfit or unsupportive of the family unit. It was utter nonsense, of course, a flimsy pretext they had likely paid a shady lawyer a fortune to concoct. But they had done it. They had emptied my accounts, sold off parts of the antique collection that were most valuable, and transferred everything, or so they thought, to Marcus's family accounts. They presented me with printed bank statements, legal documents, all purporting to show that my inheritance was gone, irrevocably transferred. The smirk on their faces was the most gut-wrenching part. They believed they had won. They thought they had finally taught me a lesson about family loyalty, about sharing, about whatever twisted logic they were operating under. They waited for my tears, my anger, my desperate pleas, but I just looked at them, calm as a millpond, and said, "That's interesting." So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. They had taken everything they thought I had, leaving me with what they assumed was nothing. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have fought them in court, knowing how long and draining that could be? Or would you have had a secret plan of your own? My calm reply threw them off. Their smiles wavered slightly. They expected a meltdown, not nonchalance. That's when I dropped my bombshell. "That's interesting," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Because grandmother always had a plan for everything, and she told me, and only me, about her real fortune. The one that wasn't in any of those accounts, the one that wasn't part of the official will. Their faces, which moments ago were radiating smugness, began to contort. Confusion, then disbelief, then a flicker of genuine fear. They thought they had cleaned me out, but they had only taken what was visible, what was accounted for on paper. Grandmother, you see, was a woman of secrets and foresight. She never fully trusted banks, not after the market crash of '29, even though she built her empire long after. She had a profound belief in tangible assets, things that couldn't be digitally transferred or legally seized on a whim. And she had a deep, unwavering love for me, her only grandchild, a love that extended to ensuring my future even after her passing, especially if her erratic children decided to cause trouble. Over the years, whenever she'd tell me about having a secret stash, I always assumed she meant a few $100s under her mattress or a jewelry box. But one rainy afternoon, a few months before she passed, she called me into her study. The room was always a sanctuary, filled with books, maps, and the scent of old paper and lavender. She handed me a worn leather-bound journal, not a diary but a ledger. "Victoria," she said, her voice low and conspiratorial, "this is for you, and for you alone. There are things in here your parents will never understand, never even think to look for." The journal contained a series of cryptic entries, dates, locations, and codes. It took me weeks, after she was gone, to fully decipher it. It wasn't a treasure map in the literal sense, but a meticulously documented record of her true wealth. Not cash, not stocks, but art. Incredibly rare, incredibly valuable pieces of art, purchased discreetly over decades, often through private sales from struggling aristocrats or obscure collectors, all under various aliases. These pieces, were never formally appraised or officially listed in her estate. They were stored in a network of climate-controlled, high-security storage units across several countries, rented under different names, with the keys and access codes hidden within the journals. Pages, some were even on loan anonymously to small, private museums or galleries in other continents, generating quiet, untraceable income streams. There was a genuine Picasso sketch, a minor but authentic Rembrandt etching, a collection of first edition rare books, each worth a fortune, and several ancient artifacts that had been acquired long before they became subject to strict international regulations. This was the real fortune. The money in the bank accounts was substantial, yes, but it was just a fraction, the tip of the iceberg, the decoy. The true inheritance was hidden meticulously for exactly this kind of scenario. Grandmother had always said, "Always have something they can't see, Victoria, something they can't touch, something that is yours alone." And she had delivered. She had ensured my financial independence from my parents' whims and manipulations. As I spoke, their expressions morphed from shock to desperate denial. "What are you talking about, Victoria?" My mother stammered, her voice high, pitched and strained. "There's no other fortune. The lawyers went through everything." "Oh, but there is," I replied, my voice calm, almost serene. "And it's something you would never even have considered because you always focused on the obvious. Grandmother knew you would. She knew you'd go for the low-hanging fruit." I pulled out a small, unassuming key from my pocket. It was an antique, intricately carved, unlike any normal house key. "This," I said, holding it up for them to see, "is the key to one of many safety deposit boxes. Inside that box, among other things, is the deed to a small, unassuming warehouse in Switzerland. And in that warehouse, well, let's just say there's enough art to make your so-called new family's fortune look like pocket change." My father's face went white. He knew, instinctively, that I wasn't bluffing. He knew his mother, and he knew her penchant for secrecy and for planning. He also knew his history of underestimating her, the smugness drained from their faces, replaced by a raw, naked panic. They started to interrogate me, to demand details, but I simply smiled. "I'm not telling you anything more. All you need to know is that while you were busy playing legal games with the inheritance Grandmother wanted you to find, I was quietly securing the inheritance she intended for me to have, the one she loved too much to ever let you touch. The fallout was spectacular. They tried to trace what I was talking about, but Grandmother's system was flawless. The legal avenues they had used to strip me of the visible assets were now useless. The art was untraceable, unrecorded in any public domain, and its existence known only to me and a handful of very discreet, trustworthy individuals Grandmother had cultivated over the years, contacts whose identities were also revealed in the journal. I quietly started the process of verifying and liquidating some of the smaller pieces, enough to cover my living expenses and to fund new ventures, proving the fortune was very real. My parents, now stripped of the illusion of their victory, spiraled. Marcus's family, seeing that my parents were now embroiled in a messy, potentially fraudulent legal battle over a non-existent fortune, quietly distanced themselves, withdrawing their support and their transfers. They realized they had been played by my parents, who had exaggerated my inheritance to secure their own position within Marcus's wealthy circle. My parents were left with only the modest stipend Grandmother had originally left them, a sum they had recklessly spent a significant portion of already, along with the legal fees from their disastrous attempt to disinherit me. They eventually tried to apologize, to reconcile, to beg for a share of this newfound, invisible wealth. But the trust was shattered beyond repair. I had seen their true colors, their greed, their willingness to destroy me for their own gain. I cut ties once and for all. I moved on, established my own life, built my own future, all thanks to the incredible foresight and love of my grandmother. The house, the antiques, the initial bank accounts, they were gone, but they were just a smoke screen. The real treasure was mine, safe and sound, allowing me to live a life free from their toxic influence. And that's how I finally truly broke free. I am now traveling the world, experiencing things I never thought possible, and investing in causes I truly believe in, all thanks to my brilliant, mischievous grandmother. Like this video if you were on my side, if you think my grandmother was an absolute genius for her hidden fortune. Subscribe for more stories like this, where the meek inherit the earth, or at least the priceless art collection. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Would you have had the patience to play the long game like I did, or would you have exposed them right away? I'll see you all in the next story.